guiding people to the correct resource, being able to pull in others in the community that might be able to answer the question. Maurice has done all of those things. He has contributed code to the server. He's fixed issues. And if you all have to watch the video of Maurice's interview with David, but it was just fascinating that there was plenty of nuggets in there, but the one fascinating one was that he learned Go just so he could make contributions to the NAT server, which is like, that's amazing to me. I mean, to go again above and beyond, out of your way to be able to learn something. And that he's also, and you can speak to it better, Maurice, but you are a teacher as well, correct? At the local university. Yeah. So it's an innate thing, but it's like for him to take his time, while he has a day job and doing all and teaching at a university and still being present as much as he is and still contributing as much as he is. So we wanted to acknowledge him, and basically invite him to be, join up with the NATS maintainers on a quarterly basis. We're still figuring out some of those things, being able to give him a complimentary pass to a KubeCon or a conference of choice, just so he can be present, either be with us at the conference. That'd be awesome if we co-locate. But so it's just some type of recognition for Maurice and people that will maybe add in the future to this program. So I think we want to and just stepping back, even the program itself is sort of intended to, again, acknowledge people who will go above and beyond, but also it builds, reinforces the community and reinforces the value that the community brings to NATS and Synadia, because we're in it every day, all the time. And frankly, nobody has to care if they don't want to. Nobody has to be involved if they don't want to, but they choose to. And that's sort of the power that the community has here. And yeah, you'll get some unique swag too. That's ambassador only, and maybe that'll be some incentive for others to.
That's yes, my ego is being inflated a bit too much, I guess. Thank you.
That's your time to take it in. So
yeah, I definitely need more time than just this. Really cool.
This is our trick to make you work even harder, Maurice. Because now
no obligation.
Well, the worst part is, remember we asked Maurice about a year ago, what can we get you? And he said was a pizza. So we had to send him a pizza. But that was that was a really hard thing to do with the international currencies. Actually, harder than we thought.
Yeah. I got this US Domino's gift card because I said I have this local Domino's here, and I order less now for my health. That might be better. But I was like, get one from those. But I got this US Domino's gift card, and I've never been to the US, and also I'm not like planning it yet. Let's see what happens. But so I was like, I cannot redeem this. Can you please guys take this back, please? I cannot do anything with this. Yeah.
Well, I'll tell you this, at least from our perspective, the participation, Maurice, by yourself and the acknowledgement there, but everyone in general, it's quite humbling for us to see, and it's humbling, and we take it very, very seriously, and we feel that we've been on this journey for a while, but we're also in some respects at the very, very beginning of what's about to happen. And we can tell that everything is accelerating at a pretty fast clip, not just for us, but everybody in the technology ecosystem, the expectations. And it's exciting for us that's happening. But we are deeply humbled at the number of people that entrust us with the technology choice, the system that they're trying to design. And so we're super excited about where we've come from, but as you can tell, especially with some of the demos that we had today, we're really excited about some of the things that we've been planning, and we just, to be frank, it's just there's a lot of balls in the air. And it's just a big coordinating process. But folks like Byron and David, and of course, Kevin on the next side, the whole Synadia team has just really stepped up in an amazing way, and you can start to see it come together. So we're super excited for 2024, super excited to, keep engaging with the ecosystem, trying to drive value. We promise we try as hard as we can and to move the needle forward, for sure. But yeah, super excited and deeply humbled.
Do we have time to do any Q&A, Derek?
Yeah, I'm happy to. If anyone has any questions, I know Yordis was raising his hand a little bit.
Before we do that, can I just jump in? So what I'm going to do, this is a promise. I'm going to download the MP4 from the talk. I'm going to extract the 2 demos and record them separately, and I'll put those onto YouTube as well. All the videos that everybody's seen are already on YouTube, and I'll make them public before the day's out. So you'll have access to those. I'll, like I say, get those videos out for the other demos as well.
Thank you, David, because I know it's supper time for you. So thank you. I appreciate that. So I think I saw one question fly by. Let's see. So Yordis's question that he posted in the chat is around on the workloads and next. I think our assumption there is that we felt very deeply about 2 aspects of it. One was, sorry, I'm still clicking on admit as fast as I can. One was very specifically the engagement of the ecosystem and having people help guide where this is going. Obviously, Kevin and the extended team there kind of ran with some of the early ideas that we had around what this might look like. But Kevin and I, after he finished up, we're already going back and forth on Slack of when can I open source this? And I said, when you and the team think you're ready. And to be very frank, the next engine, the imperative version of it, meaning I have a workload and I want to run it on that instance of the engine, will always be open source. Where Synadia might play a role is we have a lot of ideas and designs and some early work around a declarative structure. So imagine a world where you say, I've got 1,000 of these things running in Synadia Cloud, but I also have them running in all of my factories or my cafes or my cars or my charging stations. And Synadia has a very intelligent, automated scheduling system that has more of a declarative framework around it, where I can say I can run up to 100 of these. The service is attracted to wherever the requests are coming from. By the way, the KV over there is attracted to where the service is going to run. So you can imagine a world where the service is moving around and KV digital twins are also moving around and following it around. And of course, they're going back down to 0 as that changes. That will be a Synadia service in the marketplace. No commitments on dates yet, but well underway in terms of what we're trying to do there. But the notion of the next engine from an imperative standpoint, and again, apologies for the coughing. I did pretty good on the opening speech. I didn't cough once, I don't think. But we're in an area now where the ecosystem is growing so much that we want other people to do things, not only with the open source component, but for example, with Quaze. Someone is put together and we've been reaching out to that individual and applauding him and saying, this is awesome. And so we could imagine a world where the Synadia scheduling service might not be the only one out there. There might be another commercial one, there might be an open source one. And we're 100% on board with that, right? We believe that as the ecosystem grows, it takes on a life of its own. And again, with Maurice being our first ambassador there. So long story short, pretty soon, Yordis, I think we're going to open source it. And Kevin and the team and myself are very much expecting a lot of engagement, right? The ecosystem has reached kind of a critical mass now where, early on with the server, not a lot of people cared what was in the server. And it was myself and Yvonne, if people remember Yvonne, who's still, by the way, heavily involved in a lot of stuff. He can't get away from it. He still loves it. But we think the next engine is going to be a very different beast because of the maturity of the ecosystem. A lot of people are going to want to participate and engage with it. So I don't have a date, but my sense is could be before the end of this month. It will open source it.
May I follow up on something?
Of course.
Yeah, so for me, the idea of the working group, because by now it is mature, but I'm trying to find what other people are doing across the ecosystem. And you mentioned Nats is taking a lot of workload. And I'm curious to know how much of those workloads are related to application built on top of the connectivity, and how much is actually something that have to be in the engine. And if having something like a working group would allow Nats to help the ecosystem to be aligned and bring people that cares about particular topics to work together, right? Because I feel that there are things, a lot of things happening, and you probably have context, but I don't, right? And we're probably not working enough together, I guess.
Yeah, and I think I think that's a totally fair request, and our commitment is that we do want to engage at that levels. And I think Kevin and the team are also very open to that. The general gist of it is that if someone's trying to run, let's say, a more traditional style application that has access to the file system and has its own open ports and things like that, there's lots of opportunities and solutions for that, right? Kubernetes is kind of one of the main ones that a lot of people kind of go to. We're not trying to replace that. We're trying to say, if you start thinking differently about how to design distributed systems, that kind of aligns with the way we're thinking about that world. You can run an application that all it has is access to a NAT system that the next engine allows. So in other words, the operator of the next engine runs it and says, I don't care who is knocking on my front door. They have to prove to me that, I know the root of trust. So Kevin didn't talk a lot about that, but he had you saw the X keys and things like that. And it's a very similar trust chain that we have in Synadia Cloud and the operator mode for servers. And then the operator who's running the next engine says, you're only allowed to connect there. Now, I'm not saying that that's a hard and fast rule, but that's where we're starting. And so you could imagine workloads that can do a lot of different things. But now with the maturity of the tech stack and with the addition of Synadia type services coming online, we want to envision a world where you can Lego brick a modern distributed system together very, very quickly with all of the components that are there. And then, again, thinking around the security constraint, the next engine is pretty darn locked down. We've got Firecracker, so it does the isolation there. And there's some really cool things we might do with suspend and resume. Remember, Jetstream's very good at data flow, moving things around. So you can imagine, an engine is actually just, a workload inside of an engine is just an object store that we're moving around. Even if it's suspended, right, and it has state. So stay tuned. I mean, we've been talking about that, and hats off to the team. I don't know if Kevin joined, if he did, or if someone can ping him on Slack and say we're talking about him. I'm sure he could jump in and give more info. But that's kind of our thought process. So we're not restricting the type of workload, but what we are saying initially is that it is isolated. And for the most part, your interactions with the outside world are all NATS initiated. And the operator, again, who's running the next engine, they control what you're allowed to talk to. They might have multiple ones, right? And so you could imagine a world where someone comes and says, well, we've got 80 factories worldwide, and we use Synadia Cloud as a backbone, but we also have clusters running in all these factories. Now they can have next engines running in there. And if they want to just do imperative scheduling, they don't need to do anything else. But what we think might happen there is that they go, hey, wait a minute, we have this really cool declarative service from Synadia. We're just going to use that. And we can just simply say, oh, upgrade this microservice, make sure it's in every factory, run it, X, Y, and Z or whatever. And so that's the kind of thought process. And, for folks who know Kevin, right, him and myself, by the way, are very high on what potentially the future holds for WASM. I think WASM has gone a little bit slower than a lot of people want. So when Kevin originally joined us, we immediately got together and started brainstorming around what type of workloads do we want to do first, and it can't be WASM because it's too limiting right now. But you saw from the team, static binaries, JSTS as a kind of a natural thing. We're looking at making Python very easy for some of the AI ML workloads. We do have container-based stuff and then WASM. The container-based one, the reason he didn't show it is it just bloats up the VM quite a bit by putting it in there. But we do have support for it. And so we think with that, we'll cover the majority of use cases. And again, this isn't one size fit all, and we're not trying to replace Kubernetes or K3s. I think there's still interesting roles for that. But Nats has always started as a system that says we don't want to box anyone into a certain deployment platform. You can deploy anything, anyhow. And so we're trying to stay in the spirit of that. Any other questions?
So the NGX soon, is there a time order of magnitude of soon? Are we talking a couple of weeks, months?
My sense is that from talking with Kevin on Slack after he finished up, and we had a sense that people, might get excited about this. And when I was at Google, we had a rule that don't make people wait more than 8 weeks. And so I still have that in the back of my head. However, I think in this case, my sense, and again, don't hold me to it. I'll follow my sword if we don't do it. But my sense is that the team, Kevin and the team will probably open source it before the end of the month. There's some documentation stuff he wants. There's some other things. And again, that's the imperative version, meaning you can see all the engines and you say, I want to take this workload and run it on that engine. The Synadia scheduling service is definitely in play and we're thinking about it. But we wanted to prioritize the ecosystem engagement to what Yorda said about, hey, how can we make sure that this can do some really interesting workloads and also people to participate? Again, Nats traditionally had some participation at the client level, but not a lot at the server level. And I think the team has realized that the ecosystem is in a very different spot, and there might be a lot of folks that want to participate, do PRs, code, changes and things like that on Next itself. So we don't want to have people wait. On the 2.11 ETA beta, so that's a great question, by the way, Holger. What we found is that as the ecosystem has been growing and our customer base has been growing, we've been pushed really hard in a lot of really interesting ways. And so you'll see 2.10 come out, and then 2.10.1, and then 2.10.2, and 2.10.3. And it's not for our lack of testing and ambition and things like that. We've got test out the yin yang and global networks all over the place. What it is clients and customers going, hey, we're trying to do this. So for example, I'll give you a case where just Friday night, I got a page and it said, hey, we're having some issues. And I said, oh, let me take a look. And it was a log replication type of a system. And the log replication didn't have a ton of messages in the stream. It only had about 1 million or so, but it had 640 million interior deletes. And they were trying to do a scale up from an R1 to R3 and an async mirror. And to be honest with you, our system just wasn't handling it the way that we pride ourselves on doing it. And it's not, again, for lack of ambition or effort, but I said, hey, can you send me a snapshot? And they said, sure, we'll clear all the privacy stuff or whatever. They sent it to me and I could see it. And so the team put their head down and went Friday night, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, and then we just released it yesterday. And now it went from, I think the first time I got it to complete was 14 hours. Then it was something goofy like 40 minutes. Now it's about 1 minute, and the async replication now can take 15 seconds versus about 20-some minutes. So what I mean by that is that the 2.11 stuff is super important, but we're also very committed to our customer base and our user base. And so as they push the envelope, we aren't doing what the system should be doing, we're going to prioritize that. Now, that being said, I think you're going to start seeing on main the 2.11 stuff roll in. And at least in my mind, there's a bunch of design aspects around a redo of the file store to get into the petabytes do, billions of interior deletes, do all kinds of crazy stuff there. The first thing that we'll probably tackle is per message TTLs. The reason being is that not only can that satisfy LRU type use cases, which a lot of users have been asking for, it also allows the KV tombstones to auto remove themselves after a shorter period of time. You'll probably then see the KV semantics start to roll in. And we're going to engage with the ecosystem. So yeah, we're not going to do what I call a spaghetti test, because we are going to think through it, but we are going to want to get some feedback on, is it meeting the goals of what the ecosystem wants there. Some point in time, I personally might disappear for a week and work on the file store v3, type stuff. I've designed it and I'm happy with the design, but it'll probably take a little bit of time. So these things will start rolling out on main. And main, we build nightlies every night. And so I think Byron and David are keen on figuring out a better communication strategy with the ecosystem, instead of just saying, oh, just watch the commits and you'll see what's landing, and letting people know, oh, we just landed key value semantics or per message TTLs, and please try them out. And I even think Byron has suggested with Wally the notion of formalizing some of the release candidates as we get closer, to encourage people to try them out and use them. So good timers. Side effect on TTL per meaning having remaining time accessible as metadata. Not sure. Back in, I've been looking at how to do tens of millions of these things, and again, I've been sitting around in the modern Linux kernel, like with maple trees and adaptive radix trees, and then also RCU updates. With TIBCO, for those that don't know, I used to work at TIBCO, so some of the messaging products and stuff are the ones that I designed way back in the early 90s, with an amazing team over there, Rendezvous and EMS. We always had, because we were in financial systems, we always had the notion of embargoed messages. So we hear a lot, pardon me, people say, oh, we want to be able to delay a message, deliver it after a minute or something like that. The embargo systems that I designed for trading systems were very sophisticated. They understood the RTT of every single endpoint, and they made sure that they always arrived regardless of the RTT at the exact same time for fairness. What's nice about NAT systems is they already track every single link RTT all the time. And so it could be that we could do just kind of a, hey, a TTL that is either an embargoed message, or you can actually look up the metadata on the header and get a sense. So as soon as I dig more deeply into that, myself and the extended team, we'll again try to get better at communicating. Okay, we're in this code, we're doing some things. Please feel free to take a look and comment back. Anything regarding popularity for TTL? Logan, I'm not sure what that means. Could you clarify for me?
Yeah, sure. So the notion of, right, we have interest-based retention. I'm not really focused on that. It's more for like popularity. If we have like a pattern of repeated consumption, if it's not like, let's say, a queue, something more like a stream, right? And we see consumers perpetually bring down a set of messages, or a message in particular, something along those lines.
Yeah, so it very explicitly is the per message TTL will also be part of an LRU solution for KVs, where you'll tell the KV every time you do a get, refresh the TTL on that message individually. So we've heard that from a lot of folks for quite some time. I promise we listen to everything. We just have limited time and abilities, but we're doing our best. But that was one of the ones that really hit our radar. And so that per message TTL well, that's when I said it'll give us an LRU. That's what I meant. So yeah, you should be covered there.
And will that be?
In other words, you won't break anything per se, but if you go, hey, I want to set the flag on this that every get refreshes the TTL, that'll give it for you. But okay, so it's all internal. In other words, it's transparently happening for you.
That is configurable though, so it's not going to be by default, like every
Correct.
time somebody accesses a key. Okay. I did have one that I want to circle back on, and this was for the ETLT integration. I think we called it or I think Byron referred to it as a call out, right? A transform call out. Let me see if I can find my question. Yeah, so for the processing call out, are you honing in on a finite number of ETLT services to kind of start with, or is it going to be agnostic? I'm really looking from the lens of Benthos.
Yep. Yeah. So it's definitely going to be a foundational enabler. So in other words, if you're familiar with like subject mapping, imagine a world where you say, hey, in my account, I want to configure food to be, applicable to callouts. And just like the auth callout, there can be a microservice of a lot of these things that can process those. And they're allowed to transform it, deny it, or just let it pass through, however they want. Again, how all of these balls start to fit together with the next engine, right? And the declarative frameworks, you can imagine a declarative framework that we talked about. Hey, be attracted to where the requests are coming from. Hey, KV, be attracted to where the services are running. There's another one that says, hey, make sure that this thing is attracted to any NAT server that's actively running my account. And so you could imagine the system will actually place these things extremely fast, potentially even over a 127.0.0.1 loopback, meaning even though you were truly doing a call out outside the server and waiting for the response to come back to proceed, our hope there is that the impact on measurable latency will almost be negligible, and it'll run at pretty much wire speeds. And so in other words, it'll be, how fast you can process, whether it's the ETL, but it'll be an enabling situation. And you can imagine schema enforcement, validation, PII enforcement, normal ETL. And I think the new kids call it ELT now. I think they changed the letters or something. All of
ETLT.
those. Yeah. All of those would be applicable.
Yeah. And I definitely do want to bring a contribution to Benthos to make sure that like whatever we have for the call out is supported as an input there. So that way any of your existing workflows can kind of plug in nice and seamlessly.
Yeah, we're big fans of Benthos for sure, and Ash.
Actually, that and sorry, if I'm hogging all the time. I had one more question that I asked in the chat instead of asking it in Q&A when we were still on the other platform. Is Schema Registry? Is that going to be an NGS only service, or is there going to be some sort of OSS alternative? Please say no. Please say it'll be free at some point.
Right now, I think it's going to land as a Synadia service, but I think it'll be very reasonably priced. In other words, there's certain things like that we're considering that we equate with extreme high values for enterprises. This one I think has a high value, but I don't think it's going to necessarily be a high cost. So I think it'll be very reasonable. But we'll see. In other words, we could also decide, hey, but again, the ecosystem is growing at a clip where I think open source alternatives of some things, or we could do OSS reference implementations of them. The key point that I think, I want folks to understand, it doesn't mean you have to agree with me, but you have to understand is that NATS, just the server itself, probably has over $40 million of investment in it already. And that doesn't come from anywhere, right? And I'm not saying that we want people doing startups or individual folks that are so active in the ecosystem to have to pay huge amounts of money. But we are running a business, right? And we want to keep delivering on that. And so it's always going to be a balancing act. And we are going to be open to the ecosystem to say, hey, could you do this? Could you do that? Just be equally aware that I may push back and go, why do you think, it should be free? You know what I mean? And again, someone asked me the other day, it says, well, how much have you really invested in that server? And I kind of went through the history of how long it's actually been around and what's been invested in it. And they go, oh, I said, yeah, it's probably way more than people actually realize. But we will keep the ecosystem informed. Byron and David and the team are committed to, and Jeremy are committed to making sure that there's better communication. All of the folks at Synadia are very well aware of the things that I'm not good at, and one is communicating. And so they're going to keep me honest there. John Doe said about resources to read up on the state of the monitoring nets itself. This, I think, one, everything in the NAT system is monitorable, but it's also not easily discoverable. But we have for most people on this call who know Jeremy, you know, the owner of all the cool videos and content. And so I think one, I think we already did one a little bit on monitoring, but one on more advanced monitoring, I'm sure he was all ears if you want to prioritize that as he's getting his list together.
Yep. I've actually had one in the backlog for a while because I wanted to cover NATS monitoring, especially when we start seeing even more changes with the OTel support. There's going to be even more stuff to talk about there. So absolutely.
Yeah, and to be honest with you, this is it's not a foregone conclusion in terms of it's not all done. So even last night, you know, I was having an issue with Synadia Cloud and was going back and forth with Ari. I don't know if Ari's on or not. About, hey, the NAT CLI should have something like account watch or server watch or something like that. And I explained what I was trying to do and what I was struggling with. And I said, I got to go to bed. I'm on the West Coast and he's in the EU time zones. And so when I woke up, he's like, yep, here it is. It's already done. And so again, we're looking at engagement on the ecosystem to help drive that, but we're also driving ourselves because we're running a global supercluster that is, to be honest with you, it's kind of starting to go gangbusters, right? I think we're up now. I think we're getting close to 20 billion messages a day. And I would imagine that's going to double probably in the next 2 months from what I know pipeline wise of some big customers coming into it. So, and we're happy to share all of our best practices. And we've got Surveyor and we've got the NAT CLI, which is what Surveyor uses. And then we have the legacy HTTP endpoints that you can scrape. Most of us internally at Synadia always use the system account and all of the NATS messages that we can send and have the system respond to us.
I had one that had a little bit of conversation on it, but I don't see like a real answer. Thanks, Jeremy and Ginger. Was something like a NATS University, and that like I had a pretty pointed example, and it's like advanced topos. But obviously, there's tons of stuff that could be delved into in more depth. And then like a separation of like 3 different tiers is like more docs, and then like an actual like training or like Nats Academy, something like that. And then one step past is like a train the trainer kind of thing. Any curiosity whether there's some appetite for any of those?
Yeah, I mean, scaling out developer education is going to be like a huge goal this year, and figuring out how we want to structure that. It's still in progress, but we want to try to optimize for, you know, with we want to be useful with the resources that we have and make sure that we maintain like a good set of qualities for all of those like videos and trainings and everything like that. But we also want to try to figure out how we can best scale it up. So I've been brainstorming a couple different ways to produce more, you know, Rethink connectivity videos, but also just be able to kind of on the fly, very similar to this, do things like more live AMAs or have people kind of bring some meaty questions to the table, not just one we could answer in 2 minutes, but one where I can pull up a whiteboard and start demonstrating in real time and repurpose that content as like replays on YouTube and things like that. So my goal is to try to ramp up the content strategy so that we like on, you know, weekly or even twice a week basis, you're getting, you know, sporadic, you know, random topic kind of conversations. And at the same time, we might have some more like guided online course based things. So, you know, advanced topologies is like, that's a 4-hour workshop in and of itself. And we got to figure out whether we want to do, you know, a live 4-hour workshop, or we want to kind of make it asynchronous, or even maybe scale some of these out to in person where we can do a NATS meetup and I'll sit down for a day and, you know, go over all of this stuff in person. It's going to depend on it from a topic by topic basis, I think. But absolutely, we're going to be investing a lot more in the developer education aspect of it, making sure that we're growing everybody as a distributed systems engineer.
Yeah, and we've had we've had AMAs before, and haven't had a whole lot of interest. So if that's something that we think the community would benefit from again, we're more than happy to start that again. And as far as some of the university type classes, I know previously we've talked about that, and part of the issue we face is the community itself, because even if we do a step-by-step where this is how you should start NATS, implement NATS, folks seem to start on chapter 20 instead of chapter 1. So that's been a little bit difficult to try to organize. We've had companies come to us and ask us if we want to, partner with them for training, and it's just always been a difficult process. So we appreciate the feedback, though, and we're always interested in what the community is wanting to learn. So thank you.
Yeah, this is all
there's definitely a meeting them where they're at kind of aspect. Everybody's at a different stage, and how do we kind of optimize our content so we can continue to meet people where they're at. So I think it's going to be a mix of, topics, maybe some short kind of courses that take on some specific topics, but then also just let's see how we can get the community engaged and asking questions and having us kind of try and explain, bring on the right people, to the right experts from Synadia to kind of like help explain those concepts.
Yeah, Jeremy, I mentioned in the Slack, but Wasm Cloud, which Kevin come from, is extremely valuable for me to connect to people and get familiar over time with the product. So the more I get used to the lingo, the easier for me to contribute and stuff like that. And other ecosystems, especially around databases, what I found is that they create Discord voice channels. Doesn't have to be Discord, but something that people could jump and they ask amazing questions. Experts already answered the questions right there and then, so it's easier for them to go and sell to CTOs, because I don't know, for me it went from a week of I need to do a research to 30 minutes because the person was an expert, and I just went back to the CTO and say, look, here's what you wanted. And that has been extremely valuable for me as an application developer to help you to help me to sell or showcase the the values and the proposition of NATS, right? Because at the end of the day, you're expert. So having that reach is easier for me to go to a CTO with amazing content and say, hey, here's why.
That's great feedback. Thanks, Joris. Yeah, absolutely. That's the kind of vibe that we want to capture. If we want to continue to drive the sentiment that folks here at Synadia, we're like friendly, we're helpful, we have a lot of collective experience in distributed systems, and we also are experts at NATS itself. And so we want to try to bring as much of that to the table as possible and have that be as accessible as possible for people. So absolutely, 100%. I think some sort of live component where we can reach out and we can also repurpose that content for better reach and better discoverability. That's something we're figuring out at the moment.
Any other questions, folks? Well, very cool. Well, again, thank you. Apologies again for the technical difficulties at the end, but big congratulations to Maurice. It's really, really awesome to see the impact you've had, and you will always be the first official ambassador. I would imagine we're going to have quite a few more by RethinkConn 2025. But you get the distinction of being the first, and we really, really appreciate it. And again, we appreciate the extended ecosystem and are very much open to feedback on how we can do better. Jeremy is driving a lot of that. Byron and David G, obviously, who were prominent on the RethinkConn. And again, I'm not one of the better communicators, but I try to be very responsive if people ask me questions as best I can. So happy to help if I can. So yes, so John Doe, he said he accidentally closed the tab. Please do follow up to myself and Jeremy, or info, yeah, either one. everyone, thank you so much. I really, really appreciate it. Again, I think the journey has been amazing, but I have a sense that we're at the very beginning of something pretty interesting, and I think it's only going to be possible with the engagement of all the folks that showed up for RethinkConn, and of course, even with the technical difficulties, we're willing to jump on a Zoom after. So thank you again for the time and the support. I really appreciate it. Congrats, Maurice. Thank you, sir.
Cheers, everyone.
Thanks, everybody. Bye.
Thanks.